Hi, loved humans. I'm glad we're going to meet today. Humans are being invited to move beyond being human. There's a lot of conversation out there right now about getting back to normal. And many people are saying, and I'm delighted to see it, that normal wasn't working. And so something else needs to happen. And I am seeing a little bit of an understanding that the thing that needs to happen is within ourselves. There's just enough of that to help me see that I'm living in a time where humans are taking responsibility for the world that we've created. And we're doing it with more kindness and more understanding than ever before. This is where I put my hope. I've seen it in individual journeys, my own journey, all of my clients. Those are the people that are saying, I'm taking responsibility for the trajectory of my life. I'm taking responsibility for how my life plays out. I'm taking responsibility for heal my heart and to heal my mind. And so the human collective is being invited to do the same thing. And just like the individual journey is, we don't know how. We don't know how because we're going to the fight, flight, or freeze and nurture, and I'll explain that in a minute. But there's 4 responses, reactions to a worldly event or an event in our lives. And it's fight, flight, freeze, or nurture. And as long as we depend on those 4 reactions, those survival mechanisms, those defense modes, in order to navigate a human experience, we're not going to transcend. We're not going to move beyond. We will never stop polluting the earth because we'll be too selfish. We will never give to our neighbors selflessly because we're too afraid that we won't have what we need. We won't ever give up the facades and the wall and the plan B in our back pocket until we move beyond these mechanisms for survival. So first is recognition. First is awareness. First is, oh my goodness, I see that I am using a tool that is not working for me. What is so beautiful about these 4 mechanisms is that there's also another side to them. For instance, somebody who landed on fight in a reaction to an adversarial experience in their life, that person has a fight state of being. They're in defense mode. They're watching for the next slight, the next judgment. That person has a state of consciousness of fight, ready for the fight. On the flip side of that, they are also the people that bring in new ideas into our culture. In other words, they see that something isn't working in our culture. They see that it's dysfunctional and it makes them angry. And so they do something about it. They research and they move to a whole different understanding and bring others of us with them. The unfortunate thing about that is that they stay and fight. They achieve a great service to humanity, but they don't benefit to the degree that they could if they instead went to what I call their warrior self, where they recognize the assault that is coming their way. They go inside themselves. They find their warrior self. And instead of defensive reaction, they have wise response. So this time that we're living in right now is offering the people that go into fight mentality to become who they came here to become as their warrior self. And then they provide such a huge gift to the humanity that their soul is wanting them to serve. That's just one example. So to move beyond the fight, ironically, would be a warrior that taps into her intuitive wisdom. Flight is, and we all understand what flight is. Flight is get the hell out of Dodge. Just leave, go away. And if you can't do it physically, then do it in distraction. If you can't do it physically, then do it in going away, not being there, not being present. And sometimes it is, in fact, packing up and leaving. And frankly, the flip side to that, the beneficial side to that, is sometimes we need to leave. Sometimes we need to disassociate. Sometimes we need to shut down. The problem with staying on the flight side of a defense mechanism is that we do it unaware. We're doing it without knowledge. We're doing it as a default. We're doing it as a knee-jerk. And so then we just keep doing the same thing over and over, and nothing else happens. It doesn't change anything. You don't find out your power in that. You don't find your ability to tap into another wisdom in that. And then sometimes it saves your life. The person that we are all trying to become is somebody that knows when to hold them, know when to fold them. But when we leave because we understand we've checked in with ourselves, and we understand that this friendship, for instance, is not serving us anymore, and we're enabling the other person, or they're enabling us, or we're doing damage to them, or they're doing damage to us, and there's not enough movement or growth or healing that can substantiate this friendship any longer. We've outgrown it. We've got to leave. The flight turned on the higher self is somebody who, just like the fight person, checks in with herself, checks inside, and finds out that there's something else there that gives her permission with wisdom to know when to leave. The freeze, which is where most children end up or decide upon. And we can see that in how that plays out in adulthood. For instance, the child cannot fight, the child cannot flight, so the child freezes in place. And that child shuts down and tunes into what needs to be tuned into in order to survive. And a lot of children have done that, and how it plays out in the adult world is that there's just a conveyor belt, and they get on the conveyor belt, and they do the conveyor belt life, and then they get to be 35 or 40 or 45 or 50 and realize that they've been on the conveyor belt because they're frozen in place. And that's oftentimes when the human starts waking up, they become desperate enough to care about getting out of that stuck gerbil cage, frozen in place life. A beautiful attribute of somebody who's chosen the freeze is that they know how to read a room. They know how to walk in, and they have been tuning into energy enough that they can recognize mannerisms and energy and between the lines of what somebody's saying and what they're doing. So that's a huge, wonderful gift. They get to have that. What they leave behind when they transcend that is powerlessness. What they get to have when they transcend that is, again, going inside and tapping into the wisdom that's within, to then have that wisdom provide the right action, the right words, the right doing. Nurture. It was actually a female scientist that came up with that one. She use the whole saber-toothed tiger scenario. Saber-toothed tiger comes in, the mother, the caretaker, the nurturer, will turn toward the child and pick the child up and then fight, flight, or freeze. So there's a nurture aspect. Healers are nurturers. The problem with dysfunctional nurturers is that the nurturer will distract from the work that she needs to do on herself to nurture others. And that cannot be sustained for very long. It helps lots of other people, but it doesn't get her own work done. And work meaning healing the mind and healing the heart. Whenever we're talking about healing work, that's what we're talking about. Healing the mind and healing the heart. So when somebody transcends that nurturing, healing, dysfunctional state of consciousness, they turn into healers that are tapped into their wisdom. They turn into human beings that can download things beyond the human experience and provide another way. Not a little thing to be able to offer humans. The thing is, all of us can turn these 4 mechanisms of safety into a whole other way of being in this world. And actually, that's kind of what we've been called to do. That's in fact exactly what we've been called to do. All of this conversation about the end of times and all of this conversation about moving beyond and transcending and transforming, that's what we're talking about. That we tap into who we are. We become the human that isn't going to use merely human reactions to phenomena or human reactions to events or human reactions to circumstance. We go deeper and we tap into something that is much more reliable. And so the systematic tearing down of our crutches, of our things that we've depended upon, is no accident. We've called it. We've called it into being. Our spirit self that is eternal and infinite in this time period is calling this into being. So we're all bumping the game up. This does not mean that we have to meditate for 24 hours a day. This doesn't mean that we have to constantly be aware of the grand nature of the infinite source that's in all things, so that's helpful. Sometimes ice cream is good. Lots of times naps are good. And just taking a breath and paying attention to the breath. 2 minutes. 2 minutes of breathing and paying attention to the inhale and the exhale. The inhale and the exhale. There is a peace that's possible, even if it's just 2 minutes a day, even as the storm swirls. So I'm hoping that this video has helped you remember that you have wanted to bring in a better world. And I hope that this video, at least a little bit, supports that effort. I'm hoping that when I close this video off and you're sitting there, that instead of rushing to another video, that you'll take a couple deep breaths and you will say, I am open and I am willing to transcend the human response to human life. My body agrees. And I'll see you next time. Thank you, loved humans, for being humans that are willing to transcend, to heal your mind and heal your heart. The world needs you.